Yeah, they were on that show frequently, as was TKA, by the way. TKA had gone on that show a couple times. I know because I used to try to get in that show. So
did you not dance well enough? Was that it,
I don't know, man. I said only talking about it just makes me sad.
Drop the beat. A Freestyle Podcast.
From the underground clubs to the sound waves that shaped a generation, this is Drop the Beat, a freestyle podcast.
And we're your hosts, Eli and John, and this is where we celebrate the sound, the stories, and the culture of freestyle music from the early 80s to the golden era and beyond. We'll dive into the tracks, the artists, the DJs, and the moments that defined a movement.
Yeah, so let's do this. Turn it up, take it back, and let's drop the beat.
All right, so John, this episode we talked about that we're going to be delving in and concentrating on the evolution of freestyle.
Right.
And
yeah, little history lesson for everybody.
Yep. And when we say evolution, preparing for this episode of this podcast, you and I were talking about that. There's probably three distinct periods, right, of freestyle through the years. You got the early and mid 80s where it kind of all started, and then you also have the mid to late 80s, right, where it kind of hit it really hit its stride,
it hit its peak, I think, right? It's hit its thing.
Yeah. I like to say it's like the golden era.
Absolutely.
In my mind.
It's the area I remember the most. So
me too. And then you had the early 90s, and even there's some that trickled into the later 90s, right?
Absolutely.
And it was just almost like a transition period before it kind of started to fade. So to me, those are those three periods or three eras of freestyle. And
I agree 100%.
And we want to get with you guys, just talk a little bit about that today, and maybe help it to bring up some memories for you, right? Because I know it does for us, and just a little bit of education on freestyle. But we're gonna, as our disclaimer is always, John, what is it with regards
we are
to?
By no means claiming that we are freestyle experts, right? Definitely not. We're just freestyle fans. We enjoy the music, just like we love the 80s music scene. This is one of the genres that we loved very much from that time frame. So, and as Eli says, we are also by no means freestyle podcast experts, or podcast experts, I should say. But certainly appreciate all the comments we got last time, all the love everyone showed us. So thank you for that. I think you're going to enjoy today's show a lot because we're also going to play a lot of music, at least clips from a lot of songs, and I'm sure it's going to strike up some memories.
Yep. And then we got something special, too, before we wrap up this episode as well. And it's just some listener questions.
That's right.
Listeners that were DM'd us and made some comments and asked some questions, and we wanted to address those, too.
That's right. So we can do to help them out with the answers.
Yep. So let's get started on the evolution of freestyle. Starting with the early to mid 1980s, right? And maybe it might be a period characterized by the formation of the sound, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it. Back then, there really was no freestyle sound or freestyle music. And we talked about this a little bit in our past podcast, that at that point, it had a more commercial sound. In fact, I think, and do you agree with John, it was pretty much part of pop music. It hadn't really separated from pop music.
Yeah, it really hadn't found its home yet, right? It hadn't found its base. So yeah, I have to agree with you on that.
Yep. Really, the freestyle genre itself had not yet been defined when we're talking about 83, 84, going into 1985, right? It really was a period of discovery, a period of kind of fusion of different types of music, like we talked about before, with regards to some of those Eurofunk beats the breakdancers were dancing to and things like that, and kind of starting from there.
And I think part of that, Eli, has to do with the fact that, when you're talking about 83, 84, who really was ruling the charts, right? You're talking about your Michael Jacksons, Madonna. Those were the songs that were popular. And that's why we talked about last time when Lisa came out with something so different than what was really happening at that time.
Yeah. But I think what was happening, some up-and-coming producers were hearing the sounds of the streets, right, with the break beats and things like that, and kind of started to implement them into their songs. They started to blend them in there using drum machines like the Roland 808 that we talked about in our past episode. There was still some left over from the disco era as well. There was a lot of experimentation at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s with synth-pop, Italo Italo-disco type of sound as well, and even R&B influenced vocals. Because when you go back to those early days, right, of freestyle, you think about that some of those singers were not Latin singers,
No.
like they predominantly became.
Yeah.
And we talked about in our last episode was pretty much what a lot of people pinpoint as the first freestyle song that hit the airways, which was Shannon, Let the Music Play, and she was not Hispanic.
No,
right?
she was not. No, and that's definitely a great example of that. And but there's some other examples too, right? Like for example, Debbie Deb, right? When she did "When I Hear Music," which is a classic. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. Who doesn't recognize that beat, right? Everyone recognizes that sound.
Exactly. And thinking about Debbie Deb and how early she was, because this song came out in 1983, and she kind of, and we're gonna get into this in also a future podcast. She was what's considered Miami freestyle, right? She's actually from Florida and from the Miami area. In fact, I think she lives in Ocala, which isn't too far away.
She does. She lives in Ocala, which is like an hour from Orlando, and she still does some touring. Not a lot, but she still does some touring.
Yeah. I've seen her. I've seen her at one of the freestyle shows as well. But yeah, she was early. She was one of those early on sounds, and that mix of that pop sound. What other music do you think when you go back to those
I think
times?
about Naobi, right? When you think about what was that song? Please Don't Go. There you go.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this is a song known for the fact that it crossed the pond too.
It did.
So an early hit for freestyle that crossed the pond as well.
Yeah.
But once you hear the song as it comes in, you can hear that beat is not that typical freestyle sound that we came to know.
It's not, and it's funny that you said across the pond, because during that time, that's what was happening. They were sending music over here, right? So you had your Flock of Seagulls, you had the Duran Durans, you had all those folks that were coming in from, whether it's Australia or they were coming in from England. So for this one to kind of go over there was kind of interesting, right? It's kind of rare.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
What about now? I'm going to mention it again, because this is my favorite, right? You know where I'm going with this.
I think I know where
you're
going
going
with
this.
I think I know.
Lisa,
I think
come on.
I think you're going here.
Come on, that's right. That came out. That's the song that changed people's lives, Eli. All right.
At least it changed your life, right?
At least. Yeah, we got to give it a little bit more respect, right? 1984, that song came out. Great song, and but Lisa then at that time, Puerto Rican, right? Now he's starting to get that Latin feel coming in for her. Probably, in fact, I'm certain she was really the first Latino, right, Puerto Rican that kind of did anything, right? This is before your Ricky Martin. This is certainly before Jennifer Lopez.
True. Good point. Good point. No, very good point. I mean, unless you count Tony Orlando, which was that's not freestyle.
I don't think
definitely.
I'm going to count that one. Hey, talented guy, did his thing, right? He made a lot of money. So, but I don't think he's in this genre. But when I think of Lisa, I have to think of someone else that's also one of my favorites, and out of Miami, right? It was Expose, right? Expose had a great hit with what was it? Exposed to Love, and it's funny because that song. There you go. Now, who is singing lead in that song originally was a girl by the name of Allie. She was one of the original 3 Expose, and again, in a future broadcast, we'll talk a little bit about that. But Allie sings lead on this song, and that song was big around the Miami area.
Yep.
And I think eventually Ann sang it, so yeah.
Yeah, I could just tell that you're a big Expose fan. And I know you for years.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that you know so much history about this group, it's a testament to that.
I know.
It's a testament to that.
Yeah.
But those earlier tracks, I mean, they really, set the path to what we came to know as freestyle. It was because of that syncopated melody and the beats, right, that you were hearing. And so I think that sound picked up more. It wasn't R&B, right? It wasn't disco per se. So what was it really? It wasn't the pop that was out at that time, because Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince weren't, singing those kind of songs. So that's where I think
singing
it
great
started to
songs,
fracture
though.
off.
I mean, they were awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, 80s was
definitely, but it didn't have that vibe.
No,
it didn't have that particular vibe, So I think that's where things kind of started to just go off on its own path, right?
Yep.
And that's where you get to the mid to late 80s, right?
And that's where things get interesting, I think, right? Because, for example, one very popular song, and in fact, I think it might have been their only song for Nice and Wild, was Diamond Girl. If you remember that one, and you might have a snippet of that. Now, not one of my favorite songs, but certainly a huge, very popular song.
And the one thing with this song is that it started to have that really hard, that harder freestyle sound, right? The beat to it. Definitely has more of a freestyle. What we came to know as freestyle.
It does.
And so, we should mention that in this time frame of freestyle, the genre was becoming solidified, right?
It was.
But interestingly enough, whereas it started on mainstream radio, then it started kind of going underground, right? Freestyle started to get a strong club and an emerging radio presence, but it was mostly in the dance clubs, right?
Yeah, and I think
it was very much an on the scene type of sound.
It was, and I also think it depends on what city you were living in, right? If you were living in New York, you had radio stations that were still maybe playing it, but if you were living anywhere outside of maybe even like Philadelphia or anything like that, that you weren't really getting a lot of exposure to those songs. But then one of your favorite groups came out, right? One of those three guys that are known as TKA. With a banger, right? And that started changing things again. Now, still kind of underground. Started underground while it's happening, right? Because I never.
But they were hitting the dance chart.
Without a doubt, they were huge. Those guys had a huge following too, right?
And even though they didn't cross over much, but there were other groups around that time frame that did cross over.
Cover Girls.
Definitely. A group like the Cover Girls, they were one of those groups that crossed over. With
Show
this song in particular was Show Me. It was their first hit, but it got radio play. At least it got radio play even in our small, city that we live in.
Not only did it get airplay, but I also remember seeing them on shows like Dance Party USA, Dancing on Air. Back then, for those of you who are not from the 80s, they actually had shows where people would go on and dance, and music would be played, and you would just watch them dance, right? Soul Train, American Bandstand. So locally, we had a show called Dancing on Air or Dance Party USA. They were frequently, they were on that show frequently, as was TKA, by the way. TKA had gone on that show a couple times. I know because I used to try to get in that show. So,
did you not dance well enough? Was that
I don't know, man. I don't like talking about it. It just makes me sad. But
but we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about one of our favorite songs from that era too, and around that same time frame, because the last couple songs of folks that we've been talking about are from about the 1985 to 86 time frame, right? And we can't forget that Can You Feel the Beat was in that time frame. There was a song, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it in our answer to one of our listener questions, Running, which was one of my favorite songs back then, 1985 by Information Society. That was an early hit.
I remember you had that in rotation when you were DJing in your teens. I remember you were playing that song back then. Yeah.
Well, it was one of my favorite songs, and unfortunately back then I just DJ'd what I like to listen to. So
nothing wrong with that.
I didn't take too much in consideration what the crowd wanted to hear. So you got your fair share of running. But then you had groups like Sweet Sensation also coming on the scene. Hooked on You back in 1986. We already talked about Naobi, and she was following up with other hits as well.
Now, another crossover artist that a lot of people don't realize did crossover, and that was Safire. Right, Safire did crossover. She did have some crossover hits later on. She had actually a ballad, Dreaming, or something like that. It was a ballad.
Yeah, and her first club hit though that probably put her on the scene when it came to club.
Don't Break My Heart. Don't Break My Heart. Yeah, that's a great song. Exactly. In fact, I don't think I could be friends with someone that doesn't like that song. That's just how good that song is.
No, it is a good song.
It is.
Not my favorite Safire. When I say that, I don't mean that I don't like the song. I love this song, but it's not my favorite of hers.
What is your favorite of hers? You know what mine was.
Boy I've Been Told is my favorite.
Boy I've Been Told, yeah. That's the one that Mark Anthony wrote, right?
Yeah, that's what Mark Anthony wrote.
Yeah, it's a good song.
Yeah, no, that's my favorite one.
Now, I know everyone, and I can almost guarantee, and guys, feel free to drop a comment, right, if you agree with me on this. The next song that I'm going to talk about, because if you notice, a lot of the singers that we've talked about up to now have been mostly female, right? But then this young man showed up with a song called Silent Morning by the name of Noel. You guys remember him? Drop a like if you remember him. Drop a comment. Great song, right? He had a really interesting voice as well, right? Now, that one, I believe, did cross over a little bit, did it not?
Yeah, that one did.
Yeah.
That one did, definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah, he still performs that song. He had actually, that album was actually pretty good. He had a couple good songs in that album.
Yeah, no, this definitely was a banger. it's still one that gets played, in my household.
Yeah.
I've always liked Noel.
Oh, yeah.
This one, he followed that up with Like a Child, which I love Like a Child
Great
too.
song.
That was a good song.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, he was a good singer.
And it's still that New York feeling, right? And then all of a sudden you start getting some of that Miami feeling back by a gentleman by the name of Stevie B. What was the one big hit that I think everyone... Dreaming of Love. There it is. Yeah.
So
I can name that tune in two notes, Eli.
This one came out in about 1988. Spring Love came out in about 1988 as well. But I believe, and I may be wrong, I don't remember entirely. My memory fails me a little bit. But I believe that this song, Dreaming of Love, and Part of Your Body actually came out first. Before Spring Love, though Spring Love became his most famous song.
That's right.
Probably.
No, those songs did come out before Spring Love, but yeah, Spring Love kind of took him over the edge on that one. But yeah, that song definitely came over.
Yeah, and we can't forget about another crossover hit back in those days too. This one was a couple of years earlier in 1986. You remember "Fascinated" by Company B?
Oh yes, I do. Very good song. Very good song. That was a crossover hit. It's funny though. I don't think I ever remember seeing them perform at any time. It was kind of like they were. At least I don't even remember seeing them. Do you remember seeing them do a lot of performing?
No, I've never seen them perform. I don't know what they look like.
I don't even know if they kept the same members or if they rotated. If you guys know anything about Company B, drop a comment on that because we'd like to look into them a little bit more. But yeah, that's actually a very good song. I like that song.
Yeah,
very good song.
As well as going back to another female artist, Tina B. She had a couple of songs back in the day as well. One of them was January, February.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And I think she was like Honey to a Bee.
Honey to a Bee. That's right. That was hers. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, she was around that era as well, in that golden era of freestyle. So yeah, definitely can't forget any of those. A lot of great artists in that chunk.
That was the golden era, definitely. You're right about that.
Yeah. No, doing the show prep, there was art, and we're talking about probably the most recognizable names, right?
Yeah.
But I remember, of course, since I DJ'd collecting records, there's a lot of just groups and artists that only had one single, that wasn't that big, but it kind of got some play. So there's just a ton of freestyle artists back there. It is the golden era.
I think we might have missed someone now that I'm thinking about this, and I'm not sure if I would put her in the golden era for a little bit before, and that was Judy Torres, because Judy Torres had a lot of hits too. You remember Judy Torres, right? So where would you put her at?
No, she's golden era because she was. Yeah, No Reason to Cry was 1986, 87. What was the other one? I can't even think of the song now.
Yeah, she had a couple of them.
She had a
drop a comment.
No, she had
if you guys know any more songs.
No, and it's on the tip of my tongue. There's one of my favorite songs of hers.
Let me say this while you're thinking about it, and I'll let the folks know this. In a future podcast, we actually know someone who was in the freestyle world, right? Wrote a song, and they performed that song opening for Judy Torres. So we're going to have him on around that time frame, around that mid 80s. So he's going to come on and talk a little bit about that in a future podcast. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, looking forward to that. Another song that I remember, this one was one of my favorites too, was the Latin Rascals, Arabian Nights.
Arabian Nights, yeah. That was a good song. Very good song.
That was an interesting group because Latin Rascals were a production duo.
Was it Tony Moran?
Tony Moran was one of them, and is it Al Cabrera? Cabrera's the last name.
Cabrera's the last name. I don't remember his first name, but I remember Tony Moran. But that was a good song.
They produced a lot of stuff. I think they produced some of Noel's stuff. They were producing a lot of music. Tony Moran then went off, later on and did some solo work as far as singing. Right? They weren't big singers, but the fact that they came out, as Latin Rascals, not only a production team, but they actually were singing under the Latin Rascals moniker.
Not my favorite name for a group, by the way. Can I just tell you that Latin Rascals never really. I don't know, just didn't really do it for me. But we talked about Karina last time, right? And my favorite song of hers is there you go. right? Is that Give Me Back My Heart, right?
See, it's kind of like I know what you're going to say before you say it.
Look, we grew up together, folks. We know each other since we're 8 and 5, so it's just the way it is, right?
If you don't know, folks, I'm the one that's controlling the audio bits here.
He's always DJing, whether it's on the podcast or on a trip somewhere. He's always DJing it, so it doesn't matter. In fact, Eli, you remember that time we took a trip and we played a little bit of a game, and you would throw a song in there and see if I can remember that. I did pretty good at that. So,
in fact, John is very good at name that tune. So, I mean, I think he can name stuff in like half a note. He doesn't even need the whole note.
I really need to find a way to get on that show. My wife keeps telling me that. So, or Shazam. Shazam's the big one now. Yeah. I play along with that one, but I think I would just choke. I don't know. I would just choke if I were there. But, there's a guy that lives here in Orlando. In fact, he actually if you Google it on YouTube, the video is there. Johnny O, Fantasy Girl. He just kind of remade a video for that recently. It's here in Orlando. I think he lives here. He has a home.
Johnny O did?
Johnny O. So if you go in YouTube and you Google Fantasy Girl, right there, it's him now, right? And it looks like it's at his house in Orlando. Where he's doing it at in the garage. I could be wrong, but he's here. He's in the area. So that was a big song around that time as well.
No, it was. It was. This song and my wife will tell you that because I've probably said it a million times, but this song has probably my most favorite break out of all freestyle records. Let me see if I could scroll to it. But, it's coming up now. But this part right here.
You like that?
Always been my favorite break. As a DJ, something like coming out of a song to mix into it.
Oh yeah,
just my my favorite.
I can see that as a DJ. Absolutely,
yeah, definitely.
He actually did a very nice song with your favorite performer, Cynthia. Remember that Dream Boy, Dream Girl?
Yeah. Now that one was going into art, which is a good transition, right? Because that was going into now the 90s, right? Because that song Dream Boy, Dream Girl, came out in 1990, and so we went from the golden era. Yeah. And then starting in the 90s, there was like a transition period, right? And they started incorporating more house, more hip hop elements. You'll hear they like had sampled grooves that were more housey or hip hop ish. There was different beat structures, different production, and we'll hear some of them. But like Carlos Barrios had started bringing in different syncopations, different rhythms that hadn't been heard of before in freestyle music. And at that time, there was just a lot of change in music. And we were going from the 80s sound. There was house music, New Jack Swing, Euro dance was rising in popularity too. So it was just so much going on in the early 90s.
By the time that a decade rolled around, right, 89 and then turns into 90, you also had CNC Music Factory. Remember that? So they were starting to do some producing. They were producing songs for Mariah Carey. They actually produced an album for Lisa as well, or at least the A side of an album in full force. Right? Remember that? And that was the album Straight Outta Hell's Kitchen. That she did.
Is that what Let the Beat Hit 'Em?
That's right.
And
Let
stuff?
the Beat Hit 'Em,
album?
Which was a purely dance. It really left the freestyle side, and it was purely a dance song, right? And that's that CNC Music Factory influence.
And that's what was going on though, not just with with Lisa, but with others, that they were trying to expand their horizons, right?
They were.
So the stylistic boundaries within the sound was changing. They were loosening it up. Many songs from this era sound different compared to 1980s freestyle, the ones that we can still label freestyle, right? And then the songs that kept like more of a tighter freestyle sound melodically, unfortunately they started to rely on what I call the Planet Rock beat, right? And we'll hear a little bit about that if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, but we'll hear a couple examples of that. But you started hearing that, and that kind of started getting played out a little bit. But it is where they were trying to transition, I think too kind of led to where the decline as well. There was just so much going on there, and the artists were just branching off.
They were.
Kyle from TKA did his K7 thing, and that was a whole different sound there.
Totally different sound. He had some really different music there. And I have to talk about an artist that I really enjoyed listening to. I thought he had a good voice, and I liked the songs he did. That was George Lamond. And when he did Bad of the Heart, right? Yeah, good song.
Yeah. And again, now if you listen to the beat, see how different that beat was from 80s freestyle. So that's where you kind of see where trying to experiment with different syncopations and that.
And then he did Without You, where there was actually violins in that song, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Big different sound. And then, you know, of course, you had, you know, Cynthia with Johnny L doing Dream Boy, Dream Girl, which was a huge hit, right? I remember, Lisette Melendez, that's the one I was thinking about. Lisette Melendez, when she came out with, was it A Day in My Life was it A Day in My Life or?
A Day in My Life was one, but her first one was actually this song, Together Forever.
Together Forever, there you go. I was trying to think of the
this
song.
One, this one was 1990, 1991-ish, I remember. I actually saw her at a club performing this song, and just that, again, this is that Carlos Berrios beat that he starts out with. Even when you listen to
was that
like
Carlos After Dark Burials? Is that what he used to call it?
Yes. Definitely. But even when you hear the bass line was so different. You hadn't heard that in freestyle before.
Yeah.
So it was just a newness. And I think some of them started taking this newness a little too far, right?
I do.
Sometimes it worked. Like, for instance, Louder Than Love by TKA is a good example of that.
Yep.
It's slower tempo wise, but it still has some freestyle feel. But it was a different sound. It was fresh, and I think that worked.
But yet a huge hit, right? That was a very good hit. People really liked that song, and I remember that song very well. You know, it's funny when we talk about Lisette Melendez. I was just looking at some of my notes here, but I remember that she actually performed on. Remember Club MTV with Downtown Judy Brown? She was there.
Yep.
So Lisette Melendez performed there. There was actually a few other freestyle artists that performed there, like Karina, but with Temptation, right? Songs that were a little bit more pop sound. But you know, Lisette Melendez, when freestyle kind of did its thing and she moved over to salsa music, it was Carlos Berrios that was producing her. I think. And
really? I did not know that.
At least a little bit. And there was another guy named Sergio, and I can't remember his last name, but he also did some production for her there.
Is he Sergio from Mark Anthony?
That's him. That's him. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, it's like he's just walking in the studio as Mark is singing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and he sees him.
Yeah, that's funny.
But talking about that, and this isn't the purpose of this show, this episode, I should say. But there's just we heard you just mentioned Lisette Melendez. You talked about Mark Anthony. We talked about before how he was involved. He wasn't a freestyle singer, but he was involved in the scene. You had George Lamond that we mentioned him earlier. All of these went to salsa. That's kind of where they branched it. La India. So at least 4 or 5 different artists. Brenda K. Starr. As well.
She actually did very well in salsa too. She had a huge record in salsa. My wife was a huge fan of her in salsa music. But the other one that I was just thinking about, and I guess she's right around this time. And correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that Little Susie?
Yeah. And then Little Susie, just to go circle back, Little Susie, that song. Well, not Little, it's Lil. L-I-L.
Lil, that's right. Lil Susie.
Lil Susie.
She was like 13. Singing the song "Take Me in Your Arms." What's going on with that?
Yeah, exactly. But this song though is what started what I call that Planet Rock beat.
That's true. Yeah.
So.
But a great song.
It made good use of that beat. I love that.
Yeah.
But then that beat, they just started recycling it through the 90s, which I kind of think is a little sad. The originality, got a little bit lost there.
She had some other good hits too, like "Promise Me" and a couple of things. But I'll tell you a funny story about her. And I don't know if you've ever seen her in one of when she's touring now. But again, when I went to that concert in the Kia Center a few years ago, she performed, and this is really the only song she sang. But after she sang it, this is what she said in it, and I thought it was brilliant. She said, "Folks, I've been singing this song since I'm 13 years old. I'm 43 now, and I still love it." And everybody's like, it was awesome.
Well, there's a lot of people that love it too, right? This is one of those songs too that I get really good response and reaction whenever I play it at any kind of gig or party, and there's freestyle heads there.
Yeah.
It's just that and Spring Love, those 2 songs probably get the best reaction. Everybody just it brings nostalgia. Those 2 songs,
definitely.
And what's cool, one's from the golden era, the other is from
a little later on,
the transition era. So
you remember, and folks from out there that are from the New York area or even New Jersey area, you probably remember this radio station KTU. I would think it was 103.5. So
It's actually I still listen to it sometimes today on the internet.
Oh, they're still playing. Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. KTU is still, and it's still a dance music station.
Yeah. Well, so at the time, even though I was living in Pennsylvania, I was working in New Jersey and sometimes in New York. So I would listen to KTU all the time. And I remember one of my trips into New Jersey, and I'd had to get like to a certain part of Jersey before it'd kick on. It was like Newark, right when I got there, and it would kick on. I heard this song, which I thought was fantastic, by Raquel. Do you remember her first song, "In a Dream"?
Yeah, no, I remember that one definitely.
That was when I started thinking, wow, so there you go. And that was on KTU, right? They were playing that.
Yeah.
They had Freestyle Fridays on KTU at the time.
Yep.
Right?
Now this song though, this one is hitting towards the other end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually kind of after freestyle had already faded, right?
Yeah.
And then because this song came out in 1997.
Was it 97? Yeah, I guess it did.
97.
Wow, that's right.
97. So, it was a little bit older. I mean, not older. A newer song. It came out way later, and freestyle had already kind of dipped big time.
You're right.
Before.
And I think that's what kind of caught my attention. But then she had another follow-up hit, which I thought was a banger, and that was "I Fell in Love."
Now that song is definitely a banger. Yeah. "I Fell in Love" is definitely a banger.
Yeah, it starts off strong.
Yeah. Yep. And unfortunately, she was kind of like the last of freestyle.
She was,
really,
yeah.
Right.
I know Stevie B had someone that he tried to bring out that deserves a little bit of honorable mention. I cannot remember her name though.
Was it Jaya?
Jaya, that's right. Yeah.
But now Jaya, he did, but that was already her song that I remember of hers came out in '89. So she was already coming out.
Yeah,
she was coming out of that.
Yeah, so I think I guess Raquel was probably Now I have not
Yeah.
seen her perform recently. I don't know if she's still out there touring or not. So if you guys know anything about Raquel, please put something in the comments about that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I think before Raquel, I think there's two songs that come to mind that were probably the last two freestyle songs that really made an impact or impression before those couple of years later when Raquel had her hits. The first one is TKA's last song, right, that they put out there.
Was it Maria?
Yeah, it was Maria. Yeah. This one had another different sound too because it kind of had that Rock the Bells beat, in it when it starts out.
And it reminds me of West Side Story a little bit,
the tail.
Yeah,
right?
the tail. Yeah.
But yeah, this was 1992, and it was probably one of the last freestyle hits, right?
Yeah.
This song
has a classic line, right? The girls from the project, she had a long brother.
Yep. And a body.
Yeah, it's a classic line.
But she had a boyfriend,
and he was a drug dealer. That was a problem.
Yeah. Did you know this song actually? Kyle wrote it for his K7 album.
No, I didn't know that.
And he was gonna do this solo, and then he decided to do it and put it on. They did a greatest hits CD, basically. So that was kind of the last thing. They put a bunch of greatest hits on, and then they added a couple of newer songs, and Maria was one of them, and it was one that he had written for himself, but he decided to share it with the group, so they went ahead and played that. The other song that I remember kind of towards the tail end, and this one really hit the radio waves. This one actually became one top 100s hit. But it's Collage.
Oh, that's right. I'll Be Loving You. Now, funny you say that because I remember seeing them play that song on the Arsenio Hall show. Remember the Arsenio Hall show?
Yeah.
I remember them playing that song there. Yeah.
This wasn't my favorite freestyle song by any means.
Me neither. But it went well on the charts, though.
It did. Yeah. It did. And again, if you listen to it close enough, it has some of that Planet Rock beat to it. Not as much as Lil Susie.
Not as much, but it's there in the background.
But you listen
there
to
it is right there.
Yep, you hear it right there.
There it is right there. Yeah.
So, and unfortunately, I think that just too much of that ended up happening in the mid 90s, and it kind of it didn't destroy the genre, but it affected its popularity.
It affected it. And then around that time, right, you had some of the other guys coming out, then you had New Kids on the Block that started coming out. and
Yep.
you had
Yep.
Color Me Bad. You had a lot of those groups that were starting to come out, and so things were changing. Definitely, music was changing at
Yeah,
that time.
yeah, yeah, and the free the also the core group that listened to freestyle, that
Hmm.
generation was getting
Yeah,
older too, right? So maybe musical tastes were changing some, things like that. But definitely, you can hear listening to those songs, you can hear the evolution, how it went, from a more pop sound to where it went to an underground sound to now it kind of hit a more pop stride again towards the end when it was transitioning out. Right, they're
yeah,
trying to find an audience, I think,
yeah.
to some degree, and trying to expand their horizons. But unfortunately, I hate to say that freestyle kind of faded away, but it did have its
It
decline,
did.
and I think some of that had to do with it.
Yeah, and
Yep.
and really, what kind of I think brought it back a lot was the nostalgia, right? And I think a lot of folks that missed it, and a lot of the folks that. So I'll tell you something interesting. I don't know if I said this on the last podcast or not. So if I did, please forgive me. But I heard an interview by Betty D, which is also Betty Lebron. She was the lead singer from Sweet Sensation. And she said recently that she's on tour. She goes, what keeps us out here is you guys. The nostalgia that you guys have, still wanting to hear our songs, and that's why we're still out here. So I think that's kind of what helped it to come back. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yep. So,
cool.
and hopefully, we've talked about in the past that not only are we finding ourselves, we're getting commenters that are commenting
Yeah,
on freestyle, are liking our inaugural podcast, bringing back nostalgia. We had one commenter just saying that they felt that it was doing so much, for the community. That to them, freestyle was more than a genre.
yeah,
It was, basically a culture,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, there's still a lot of people out there that really love this type of music, and that's why we're doing this
yeah.
podcast. But hopefully, we're hearing some of the influences of freestyle in pop music
Hmm.
nowadays as well. So it hasn't totally died, and it's never
Oh,
forgotten,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But we it's not how it was in its heyday,
yeah.
and that's something that we miss. But fortunately for us, there's Spotify, right, and
That's
Apple
right. That's
Music.
right. You can
So
create your playlist right there and be happy about it. But going back to what Eli said about for some of the comments, we really appreciate that. So feel free to throw comments in there. If you need to correct us on something, please correct us on something. Because again, like we said last time, we're definitely not experts. But I hope you folks enjoyed this segment, right, and listened to some of these songs and some of the things that we were going back with. Hope they sparked some memories for you. And if you're listening to us for the first time and you're not really familiar with freestyle, download some of these songs. Go out there, check them out on YouTube, and
yep.
see what you think about it. There's a pizza shop here, not far from my house. The guys came down from New York, from New Jersey. I'm not going to mention the name, but it's a great pizza shop. But when you walk in, they're playing freestyle music. So when I went to get my slice the other day, young girl, couldn't have been more than 18 working there. And I asked her, so what do you think about the music? She goes, I really like it. Right? She's really, enjoying it. So if you've never heard it, download some of these artists. Take a look at, listen to them and see what you think of it. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
And unfortunately, we couldn't name like every artist
no,
that's
it's
out there, right, in
impossible.
our little
Yeah,
synopsis of the evolution of freestyle. But, like John said, just go ahead and do some discovery, right?
yeah,
Hopefully, this kind of gets, the gears rolling in your mind, and start looking at stuff. You go down a YouTube rabbit hole,
that's
right?
right.
Just
Yeah,
look up freestyle, and you'll find a lot of great and new music as well.
yeah.
So,
And
but
in our case, freestyle is definitely not the first thing in our lives, right? We have other things that are much more
oh
important,
yeah.
right? But we like to talk about it. We like to listen to it. So check it out. See what you think about it.
Yep, definitely. And we're not the only ones, right?
That's
We got
right.
a few listener questions, like we said,
We
that we wanted to
do.
address. John, why don't you go ahead and take the first one?
So the first one is from. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on, because as you know, I'm not that young anymore. So, so I'm gonna read it directly from here. So this is from Antonio. He's from the Jacksonville area. So shout out to the Jacksonville folks over there. And he had a really interesting question, right? And and it kind of goes back to what it definitely goes back to what we spoke earlier on. He says, where does information society fall in the freestyle landscape? Interestingly enough, right, and if I'll take this one, Eli, if you don't
Yeah,
mind,
go
and
ahead.
then you take the next one. So when you think about the group Information Society, right, they really weren't a freestyle group. What they were is more of a synth-pop, I don't know, maybe like even a new wave group.
Mm-hmm.
So they were more in the lines of a Pet Shop Boys, for
Yep.
example, right, or OMD. And Running was a very good hit of this, but it wasn't their biggest hit. The biggest hit that they had actually sampled a Star Trek
Yeah.
film. You guys remember that, right?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was it, Eli? Pure
Yeah,
Energy, right?
yeah, Pure Energy. What's
Yeah.
on your mind? It actually,
What's on your mind?
Yeah, sample Leonard Nimoy.
That's right, yeah. But when they came out with Running, now that song I would have to say has a freestyle sound
Yeah.
to it.
Yep.
Right. And
100%.
as we talked earlier, Eli definitely played that song to death. But it was a great song. So the answer to your question is, where do they fall in the landscape? As a group, not really a freestyle group, right? But song-wise, Running definitely falls within the freestyle landscape.
Yep.
Yeah.
And John, I would even say that as a group, right, they weren't freestyle, but they did produce a quintessential freestyle classic. So
They did, absolutely. Yep.
So
Yep. So, Antonio, thank you very much for the question, and hopefully you'll have another question for us sometime soon. But thanks for sending that out.
Yep. The other question we have is from Hector. And Hector wants to know what makes freestyle different from EDM and other electronic music. So,
Good
Hector,
question.
good question as well. By that question, I have a feeling that you're not, the typical freestyle fan or a freestyle fan. If you're probably a fan of EDM, but EDM, as you know, is an acronym, right, for electronic dance music, and it's an umbrella term that encompasses a broad range of electronic music styles. It's electronic music. It's termed that way because it's music that's mainly used or made using synths, sequencers, drum machines, right, samplers, computers, and with a more up-tempo dance type of rhythm to it. If you think about freestyle and all the snippets that we played just a little while ago, freestyle is both a form of electronic music, right, and it's dance music, right? So if you think of that, but that by definition, freestyle is actually an early style of EDM, and it's considered a subgenre of EDM. Modern EDM styles we know include like house, trance, techno, and they use that kind of boom, 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 boom type of four on the floor, what we should call kick drum rhythm. Well, that kind of rhythm, right, is what we hear in most EDM. But there's some EDM like dubstep, drum and bass that has more of a syncopated type of beat, right? Where it's not just that 4-on-4. Many of those break beats that you hear in dubstep, that you hear in drum bass, some of them, those are sampled from years ago. They were used in freestyle as well. So those breakbeats are shared with freestyle too, but at different tempos. So you can see where freestyle still is in that genre, but it's just a subgenre, right? But it is EDM to a degree. It's a subgenre of EDM. It's both electronic music and dance music. So Hector, I hope that answers your question too.
He sounds kind of young guy there, so hopefully he gets a chance.
Well,
to
hopefully, he
talk
got
to
some
him.
education,
And
right? It was a good
we
question.
Educate him a little bit. That's right.
So,
and again, folks that are out there, I know we have some DJs that are listening in, and so because you guys made some comments. So if you disagree with our answer, please feel free to mention that as well in the comments.
Yeah,
We don't mind.
yeah.
But we also like the positive comments that you guys are giving us. So
definitely.
please keep those.
Keep the
coming as
likes
well.
coming, the subscribers
Yeah.
coming. We're not doing this for money or monetization or anything like
just
that.
for fun.
We're doing it for fun, but it makes us feel good. It makes us want to do it again, do another episode, right? When we see that response. So keep it coming. So just to wrap it up, John, on the future episode, you talked about that we're going to see if we get on a conversation with that person that opened for Judy Torres,
The
right?
mystery person. Can't mention a name yet.
Yeah.
but-
We
but
also
he's
want
here,
to we also want to talk about it in a future episode. Something that might be a little divisive, right? And it's the difference of the New York City freestyle sound compared to the Miami sound, right? Two big time centers of where freestyle originated from.
Yeah, we're not going to make it like an east-west thing, like the rap thing was, right?
Or north-south thing.
Or north-south. No, it's just a little bit of a difference, right? We'll talk a
yeah.
little bit about those differences. Still great. Both were awesome. But they have slight differences, and we'll talk a little bit about what they are. Yeah.
And we also, if there's any topics that you'd like us to discuss, you want to hear about, please write those in the comments too. DM us, get in touch with us somehow, and we'll be more than happy to consider that, right, and do some research and bring it up in a future episode as well. So
Absolutely. So, Eli, what is the song that we are going to wrap things up with today that we're going to take everyone home with?
Before that song, we got to let the listeners know that they have some work to do besides just coming up with topics for us. they need to go ahead and subscribe, like,
smash the like button, mash it. Yeah, and we do have some subscribers, so thank you for that. We appreciate you guys subscribing.
Yes.
Yeah, right off
and you know, we say smash the like button just because that seems like
that's what,
what we're supposed to say. Yeah. So due to limitations with YouTube and that platform, we can't play all the snippets that we would like to, and we can't definitely play our drop the beat song of the episode. So for additional content, we advise you to go over to our Mixcloud version of the podcast, which is audio only, but you'll be able to hear and check out that additional sound content.